Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Atheneaum Spotlight with Guy McLean. And I'm Guy's chatty co-host, Mark Auerbach. You're watching us on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 or listening to us on 89.5 FM WSKB. And Guy, I like the music you picked for our openings. That's kind of cool.
Yes. I think that's a great version. Of course, it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I don't know if the young people can remember them, but they were a big deal back in the '70s. And what I find is interesting is they would take classical music, and they would do kind of an electronic rock version of it there. But they did it's pretty remarkable what they did with it. And the one that we're using as as our opening music is taken from Copland's ballet music, Rodeo, that he wrote back in the '40s there, which is a great piece of music, and I think that's why Emerson, Lake and Palmer took it on. They thought it was, they thought it was a great piece of music to work with. And they did a great version of it. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, when you say the old with young people versus old people, I don't think the '70s music really makes us be that old.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's amazing. A lot of millennials, listen to a lot of the music coming out of the '60s and the '70s. I've talked to millennials who are into Led Zeppelin and a lot of the rock groups that were big in the '70s. In fact, I had an encounter. I was talking with some millennials a year or two ago, and they were saying they were listening to Led Zeppelin, and I said, yeah, I remember back when I was in high school, they were really popular. They were coming out with a couple of good records, and they were just like shocked that you mean you actually were listening to their music when it first came out. They thought that was a big deal. So yeah, I think in a way the '70s
All right.
music.
Truth be told, what were you listening to when you were a senior in high school?
Truth be told, Led Zeppelin was one of the groups that I was listening to, but I was kind of a weird kid. When I was in high school, I was listening to contemporary classical music quite a bit. I was listening, I was a musician at that time, and listening to a lot of classical music and a lot of kind of cutting edge, modern classical music like Karlheinz Stockhausen and Pierre Boulez and all those guys, which of course now very few people are listening. It was kind of a big deal. If you were into if you were kind of avant-garde, then you would listen to Stockhausen, and he influenced a lot of rock musicians. Like a lot of people know Björk. The Icelandic singer, she was a big fan of Stockhausen and used elements of Stockhausen's music in her own pop music. So who would have thought? And then another person I really liked was the Polish composer Krzysztof Penderecki, who wrote this incredibly weird piece back in the early '60s. It was written for 52 string musicians, string instruments, all doing different parts. And he would have these big block chords, really weird chords. And it was, that was the Cold War era. And he was writing, the piece was called Threnody to the Victims of Hiroshima, really kind of an intense piece of music. But the lead guitarist of the rock group Radiohead, Johnny Greenwood, is a big fan of Penderecki and has written music that's very similar to Penderecki's 1960s piece. Who would have thought that rock musicians would be into these contemporary classical musicians? But actually in high school, like I said, I was very strange. I was listening to a lot of very weird stuff at that time.
I guess if we had been in high school together, we would have been in opposite sides of the cafeteria, because I would have been listening to Barbra Streisand and Funny Girl and Carol Channing and Hello Dolly, or maybe Stephen Sondheim and doing Company or something like that.
Yeah.
I was with the show tune kids at the last table,
right?
In the lunchroom.
Well, it was, even though I was listening to a lot of strange contemporary music, I was also involved in a lot of the music because I was a musician doing a lot of the music groups, and I actually performed in Oklahoma. We did Oklahoma the musical Oklahoma one year. I got involved in that. We did My Fair Lady, Camelot. I think the 3 years in high school we did Oklahoma, My Fair Lady, and Camelot. I was definitely hanging out with the musical people as well. Yeah. Yeah, and I have to say, I really enjoyed that. I wish we could have done West Side Story, and I hear there's a new movie coming out, a new version of West Side Story. I can't wait to see it.
Well, it's already come and gone, sort of. It opened at Christmas.
Oh, did it? Oh,
and
I see it. So how far behind I am.
Ariana DeBose, who played Anita, got the Oscar, and it's a good movie adaptation. I don't know. Most musicals, stage musicals, don't adapt well anymore to the movies. I went last year to see the movie version of Dear Evan Hansen that I thought was absolutely awful. And then the stage version was on tour in Hartford last week. And the stage version was superb on every level. And I thought, how could they take something that good and turn it into such an awful movie?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a problem. I don't think musicals translate very well to film. Film, the way the medium, the way film works. Obviously, we're used to background music in films, but when music becomes the forefront, it just seems like it doesn't work as well in film. Even though there are exceptions to that, I think the My Fair Lady that came with Audrey Hepburn and Rex Harrison is considered a classic movie. The first version of West Side Story with Rita Moreno, and was a pretty good film too. I think that's considered a classic.
Yeah, I think the last really good movie musicals were Cabaret, which is about 50 years ago.
Yeah, 70. It came out 71 or 72?
72. And Cabaret, incidentally, opens Goodspeed's season in a couple of weeks.
Great.
Down in East Haddam. And Grease as a movie was just so much fun.
Yeah,
much better than the stage version of Grease. And Hairspray was good too.
Right. And also too, I'm trying to remember Norman Jewison did a film version of Jesus Christ Superstar that I thought was pretty. He did some kind of avant-garde things with that, some real cutting-edge kinds of things. That having tanks coming over sand dunes and setting out in ruins of Israel, I thought was very interesting. He did some really original things with that. So that I think that kind of worked pretty well too.
Yeah, I guess it did. But I mean, a lot of the stage musicals that get transformed into movies now just really have.
Yeah, there's Evita too, which will get done, with Madonna. And actually, Madonna was not too bad, overall. But I don't know if that, I don't think that holds up as well as some of the earlier musicals that were done, like Cabaret and.
Yeah, well, I mean, Evita as a stage musical was a stunning piece of theater.
Yeah.
And then the movie was kind of so-so, and yet, some ballet company, I think it's Ballet Hispanico, is doing a ballet version of the story of Eva Perón, but not using the Andrew Lloyd Webber score an original score being written. Yeah. The story of Eva Perón is fascinating.
Yeah.
In any genre.
That is an interesting story, and I think the thing about Evita is there's some Andrew Lloyd Webber could really at times write some great music, but it doesn't seem to hold together as well as some of the other things he's done.
Yeah.
And I think there's mixed feelings about Cats. And other the Phantom of the Opera and a couple of the other things he's done. I think there's mixed feelings about those. Phantom of the Opera, the film, again, there's issues with that. Some people, I think, have problems with that film as well. It's kind of interesting. Andrew Lloyd Webber is kind of interesting. He's been very successful on the stage, but sometimes he seems to really get it right, and sometimes he seems to really get it wrong.
I think I happen to like his music a lot, but a lot of his shows just if you take the music away from the show and you listen to it, it's very pleasant. But the shows themselves, there was one called Aspects of Love, which was like 3 or 4 different people in various age ranges having affairs. And after like a half an hour of it, it was like, just let me listen to you, just sing. Don't make love, just sing, and all that.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting how that works there. He in some ways I think he's a really good composer. He's written some great now classic songs, but the musicals can be on and off in terms of as stage productions and this sort of thing. But what about here we're talking about transferring Broadway musicals from the stage to film. What do you think about some of the opera films that have been made? Like Zeffirelli did a couple of great films in the 1980s. I think the one that I like the best is his version of La Traviata. That he did with Teresa Stratas and Pavarotti.
Yeah,
I thought that was and boy, the stage sets, that film, just a beautiful film in terms of
it's funny though. Now that the Metropolitan Opera and some of the other opera houses around the world live stream their stage productions in high def, and you can go see them either at the Amherst Cinema, I believe, and you can go see them in Great Barrington at the Mahawi. They stream the Bolshoi Ballet streams and a few other things. Those high def streamings are really pretty good, and you don't really need to make a movie out of it, but just to show what's going on the stage from various levels.
But I do like the idea of making a feature film rather than just filming a stage performance, making a feature film. And I think Zeffirelli, I think his idea was we can make, opera can be made into great film. And boy, I think he did it with La Traviata. He did a couple of others too that I don't think were quite as good, but I thought La Traviata shows you what you can do with film, with a feature film of an opera. But it's hard to do. It's hard to pull off.
It really is, because opera's so unnatural when you think about it.
Yeah.
You have people singing. I mean, I use Traviata as an example. She's dying of TB. She's gasping for breath, and she can sing for 20 minutes.
Yes.
It's like, where's the reality check?
Right.
So what's going on at the Atheneum?
We've got some great programs lined up for the summer. It seems amazing. We're already getting ready for our summer reading program, which is a huge, big deal. We get a lot of participants in that, do a lot of programming. We've got, various concerts coming up. Folk singers and other people coming in. So we're trying to line up a bunch of now that we can actually gather and go and have programs in the building. We're setting up a lot of programs, book reading groups, children's story time. We're doing a lot with that, trying to get kids back into the library again. And then also programs. We've got a great series of programs on various kinds of culinary delights, various food programs, things like that. So we're trying to have a real diverse program. It's so nice to be able to get back in the building again, see people coming in for programs and book discussion groups, things like that. So we've got a lot of stuff lined up.
How many people come to the Atheneum in the course of a week? Do you have any idea?
I would say in the course of a given day, it can be anywhere from 100 to 150 people. So we're open 6 days a week. So I would say probably 500 or 600 people go through the Atheneum on a given week, and they can be coming in to do everything from working on a resume or just checking out a novel to coming in for a program, a concert, or a book discussion group. And also too, because the Atheneum has art museum, and we're hoping to open the history museum up soon. We get people coming in for that, so people are coming in for art exhibits there and everything. And we're really excited about our summer feature. We're featuring the artist Ruth Kerr. Ruth Kerr is a nationally prominent artist who lives here in Western Mass. She's been in galleries all around, museums all around the world. Her work is collected in the Minnesota Art Institute. the Minneapolis Art Museum. She's in, surprisingly, in a museum in Haiti. She was actually spent some time down there, but she's going to be our featured artist, and wow, she's doing a lot of really incredible art on very interesting issues. She does it in very strange ways. She takes Greek myths, which of course has been something that artists have been working with since the Renaissance. You know, Titian and Tintoretto and Michelangelo and Raphael, all those artists of the past took Greek mythology and painted paintings of various scenes from Greek stories. That was very popular in the Renaissance especially, but it's been a tradition that's continued to the present day. Well, she has picked it up too, but she feels that a lot of these paintings were presented in kind of a narrow male perspective. She's flipping it around, taking the Greek myths and reinterpreting it from a feminist perspective. And so her paintings are very interesting, very unusual in that she does a painting of one of the stories that Titian did a very famous painting of Danae and the Golden Rain. And this was a story of the rain coming down. Danae was this young woman, this sort of thing. And so Titian did this painting. Well, she took it and used it as a theme as a kind of a feminist commentary on both Titian and the Greek mythological story. So it's a really fascinating painting that she did. But it looks a lot like the Titian, but she kind of changed it and altered it in kind of strange ways, and makes it a very different experience. So we're really excited about her as the kind of our featured artist for the summer there.
And you've got one more Mosso concert on May 19th. Right.
We're really excited about that. A good combination of pieces. It's like a real variety of pieces on the program. So that's going to be an interesting concert. It's going to finish our series of 3 concerts. And we're hoping next year we can do more. I'm hoping we can do more than 3 next year. I would really like to see that happen.
Well, yeah, that would be fantastic. And Mosso is really, they're getting their name in the spotlight quite a bit right now. They just had a great chamber concert called Mosso's Virtuosos at Symphony Hall. And they announced recently they're coming back to Symphony Hall with 2 full programs. One, a Stephen Sondheim celebration on June 23rd, which will feature the conductor Tim Stella, who, although he lives in West Hartford, has been the conductor of Broadway's Phantom of the Opera for 20 years.
Really?
And he's bringing with him 2 Broadway stars, Hugh Pinero, who starred as the Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and his leading lady who played Christine on Broadway, Lisa Vroman. And so you think you hear all these people with Andrew Lloyd Webber connections singing Stephen Sondheim, but all of them have done extensive Sondheim work. And then the other performer on that program is a guy named Ray Hardman. And if his name is familiar, he's from public radio. He has his own show on Connecticut Public Radio that apparently gets picked up on New England Public Radio. So that's in June. And then in July, Maestro Kevin Rhodes is returning to conduct the musicians, and part of it will be light classics, and part of it will be music of John Williams.
Oh, that's great! I think I think Tanglewood is going to do some John Williams.
Tanglewood
concert.
is doing John Williams as well, and Sondheim, who passed away last year.
Yeah,
his works. There's a Sondheim celebration at Tanglewood. There's Barrington Stage will do a little night music this year. So there's a lot of things, but it'll be nice to hear the musicians in their home turf.
Sure is. Yeah. And that's one thing. The Atheneaum is also, in addition to featuring the Springfield musicians, we're planning a trip on July 30th to Tanglewood. There, and it should be a great experience. We're going to go, have dinner at a nice restaurant close to Tanglewood, and then go over for a great performance of the great pianist Paul Lewis, who I would say is, potentially the greatest interpreter of Beethoven, now working, now living, and he's doing two Beethoven piano concertos, and then also too on the program is a piece by a young American female composer by the name of Caroline Shaw. She's very famous because she won the Pulitzer Prize. She's the youngest recipient of the Pulitzer Prize. She won the Pulitzer Prize for music at the age of 31.
Wow.
Which is just unheard of. And one of her pieces is going to be played along with two Beethoven piano concertos. So it's going to be great. Caroline Shaw, I think one of the leading American composers today, along with Paul Lewis, one of the great interpreters of Beethoven, on the program. And so we're going to have. It's going to be great fun. We've got a bus lined up. People can sign up at the Atheneum, and we're providing the transportation, we're providing dinner, and then they'll get to go to the concert.
So that's a whole evening, and they just park once at the Atheneum.
Yes, yeah. You just get to you just come down to the Atheneum. You get on the bus. We'll drive you to the door and take care of it from there.
And will you stand up at the front of the bus and tell them all about the program?
Absolutely.
Before every Mosso concert, you do a little program note.
Yep. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a bus lecture. Give a little pre-concert talk on the bus on the way there. So people will get a little introduction to the concert, as well as a great dinner and a great concert to hear.
So where do people get information about what's going on at the Atheneum?
The best thing to do is just go to our website, westath, WESTATH.org, and just check. There's a listing of events and programs, and there's always 4 or 5 things every week going on. So it's a good idea to check it weekly. And just see what we have planned. But what I would say is for the May 19th concert and the trip to Tanglewood, limited tickets. We can only take 38 people for the trip to Tanglewood. So if people are interested in that, they should get on the website, check that out real soon, or give us a call.
And of course, if they sit, there's a premium seating charge if they sit in the front row.
Yes.
For your speech.
Yeah, that's right. If they're the ones that are up close, for my talk on the bus, they there's an extra charge for that.
Yeah, there's an extra. And what are they serving? Just a picnic?
No, we're gonna go to a restaurant.
Well, how cool is that?
So we're gonna set up have a restaurant, provide a dinner for the group. So it'll be nice. It'll be a nice social occasion too. People, what I've told several people is invite your friends, make it an event. Make it a nice evening out with your friends.
And if people, are you all sitting on the lawn, or you're sitting in the shed?
We're in the shed. We've got tickets in the shed. We've got that already set up. We've got the tickets already booked. And so people are going to have really nice tickets inside the shed. But they're going to have time. I think the way we'll be able to do it is after we have our dinner at the restaurant, we'll be able to get over there ahead of time so people can go to the gift shop, walk around the lawn. I always love to, prior to the concert, in the middle of the summer, many times it's really beautiful. I like to, walk around the grounds and just enjoy it because the Tanglewood grounds are just beautiful. That's an experience
They're beautiful.
in itself.
I think now, I may be wrong, but I think now you can just wander around on the grounds the buildings are closed, but you can wander around during the day. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of land.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. That's to me, that's one of the highlights of going to Tanglewood is just a chance to kind of just enjoy the beautiful grounds prior to a concert. It gets me in the mood for the concert. Just walking around the grounds, and and people can lay out on blankets before. We're going to have tickets inside the shed, but people can bring blankets, and lay out on the lawn ahead of time and everything too. So that it should be a great experience.
I don't know about you, but I have been to events at Tanglewood where shed tickets are part of it. I prefer prefer to be on the lawn. I like lying out on a blanket or a lounge chair looking at the stars.
Yes. Yeah.
Eating
Yeah.
and drinking. I mean, the Tanglewood experience is something that we have here. It doesn't make a difference who's performing or what the music is. The Tanglewood experience is unique, and we have it.
Yeah, that's right. And you just think about how close it is to us. It's really nice. And I think this will be really nice because some people don't like to drive at night. And the beauty of this is that, your transportation is taken care of for you. You're going to be driven right up to the front door. And then also, too, I think this is a great chance to get a chance to meet other people, like-minded people who enjoy going to Tanglewood, enjoy classical music concerts. Yeah. So it gives people a chance to meet new people who have similar interests. So I think it's going to be a great experience.
I think that sounds exciting. Maybe I'll sign up and go.
I hope you do.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to take a break, Guy, to acknowledge the underwriters that make this programming on Atheneaum Spotlight possible. And then we'll come back. We'll have a couple of guests to chat. So, you're listening to Atheneaum Spotlight on 89.5 FM WSKB, or watching us on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 and Southwick Community Programming Channel 15. And if you missed a part of today's program, or you want to share it with friends, or catch one of the archived editions, you'll find them on YouTube under WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Peter Coles is our chief engineer, and we'll return after these messages.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Barnes & Noble College Bookstore in the Ely Campus Center, offering Westfield State t-shirts, sweatshirts, and gift merchandise, all of your academic needs, and offering textbook materials in new, used, ebook, and rental formats. Available at the bookstore on campus or online at westfieldstate.bncollege.com.
Live from Studio This is Ken Stomsky from Ken's Den on WCPC 15 and 89.5 FM, Tuesdays, 8 to 10.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Atheneaum Spotlight with Guy McLean, and I'm Mark Auerbach. And we're going to be spending this next half hour with the good people from the Berkshire Opera Festival in Great Barrington. They perform at the Mahawi Center for the Performing Arts, and they perform in some of the other really wonderful venues in Western Massachusetts. And Guy, you and I got to go last summer.
Yes.
And see, it was at Simon's Rock, and we saw Glory Denied, which was really kind of a fun contemporary opera experience. It was more like going to a musical theater piece than it was really to go to an opera.
Really, really was. It was a great performance, too. I was just really impressed with the quality of the performance. It was wonderful.
And we have with us Abigail Rollins, who's the Berkshire Opera Festival Executive Director. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right? Thank you so much.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Beth Greenberg, our director for our second stage opera, 3 December, will be joining us in just a moment. But again, I'm so pleased to be joining you today and having this conversation. So thank you for having us.
So you're just ramping up now for a really great season. Well, actually, I shouldn't say ramping up because you did a concert not too long ago at, I believe, St. James Place. But you've got a couple of operas coming this summer, another concert, and I would assume you're in production and pre-production now for both of those.
We are very busy getting ready for the summer season. Our artists won't be arriving until a little later. We've got a couple of months until the artists start arriving here in the Berkshires, but we are very, very busy in all of our preseason preparations, ordering all the materials and the supplies that we need, making sure that we've got our housing lined up for everyone arriving, and of course, making sure that our wonderful directors, including Beth, who's just joined us. Hi, Beth.
Good morning, Beth. Beth Greenberg.
For us.
Hey, nice to see you.
So, why don't you go through the season show by show, so to speak, and let us know what you're doing. And we should remind people that all of the information of your season, how to get tickets, where the theaters are, who the casts are, and all of that is available online, berkshireoperafestival.org. So, Abigail, you can start.
Sure. So our summer season has three components. We have our larger main stage opera, which this summer will be Mozart's Don Giovanni, which will be at the Mahaley Theater in Great Barrington. And that will be August 20th, 23rd, and 26th. So that's our larger main stage production. Then we have our second stage production, which will be this summer, 3 Decembers by Jake Higgy and Gene Shear, and directed by the lovely Beth Greenberg, who's with us today. So that will be at a new venue for us, PS 21 in Chatham, New York, just over the lines. We're very excited to be performing there for the first time. And those performances will be July 21st and 23rd. And then rounding out our season, we always do a free community concert. So for this year, we'll be at the Berkshire Museum in Pittsfield, and that will be on Wednesday, August 10th. And the programming for that will be a celebration of music by Black composers. So we're very excited for this season. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to opera or if you've been a lifelong fan. Our programming, there's something for everyone this year. So
yeah, it's very, very diverse. The one that intrigues me the most is 3 Decembers. Partly because it's based on a play by the late playwright Terrence McNally, who most of our audience will know from his theater works.
Right.
He wrote the libretto for like Anastasia, which is the most recent world premiere at Hartford Stage that went on to Broadway, but he's known for Ragtime and a whole bunch of plays and musicals.
Yeah.
Very prolific writer. And this opera is based upon one of his plays. And so I want to learn more about that. So Beth,
Yeah.
Beth, tell us a little bit about it. And since our audiences may not know anything about the play it's based on, let alone the composer, the lyricist, and how it's been brought together.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so the story from Terrence McNally, one of America's great playwrights, certainly, who's just prolific writer for the Broadway theater. It's actually an unpublished play of his, 3 Decembers, as far as I understand. And but the play gets turned into a libretto by the other great playwright writer, American Gene Shear. If you remember President Biden's inaugural address, he quoted something from one of Gene's, not only words, but something that Gene wrote also as composer, his American anthem song. So you have these two American theatrical wordsmiths, Terrence McNally and Gene Shear, and then you put together the music of Jake Higgy. So it's an extraordinary combination of artists who really have their hands on the pulse of what's going on in American society. And the story looks at a family, kind of, fractured family with a very, very successful mother who the children are very estranged from. The first scene opens up, there's a phone call between the three of them. Mom is on Barbados, I believe, in the Caribbean, having a vacation during Christmas. And the kids, Charlie, the son's in San Francisco, and Bea, the daughter's in Connecticut. And these three worlds are trying desperately to connect. And so we see little fragments of their lives and attempts at making a meaningful family connection, which I don't want to be a spoiler. You see the way it does turn out in the story. But so it's an important drama for our time. It's of things that we've had to live and crises that people have had to deal with. Certainly the AIDS crisis, that's a big part of the story. Charlie's in San Francisco, first seen in the 1980s, and his partner is getting sick. And so he has to deal with his partner's death, how his mother and sister deal with that, how his sister deals with her own failing marriage. We know she drinks too much to compensate. So Terence really puts his finger on these stories of American life.
And Hagee's music, I mean, I think he's one of the leading American opera composers today. People may not be familiar with him. Can you talk a little bit about his style?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's a beautiful composer. He's written big pieces. He has a Moby Dick opera. I mean, what's bigger than that, right? And then smaller chamber operas. This is one of them. It's for a small ensemble, 2 pianos and some instruments, and 3 voices. So the forces are sort of relatively small, but his voice is very American, very accessible. We're doing opera in English, so we have a wonderful diction coach with us, Lynn Baker, who's a fantastic colleague. In fact, I have a lot of colleagues from City Opera who are now gravitated in the Berkshires, fantastic people. I'm happy to work with them. And Gene's music, it just goes right in. It's beautiful. You don't, there's no filters. He just has a way of just reaching the human heart and really supporting the words that Terence and Gene put together and stuff. And beautiful composer, and so totally accessible. It's a great first opera for people, also because of its real theatrical roots. It's a great dramatic work as well. You have Terence McNally, Gene Shear, and Jake Heggie. I mean, 3 of America's greatest writers right now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say too, it just shows you that, I mean, I think a lot of people think of opera and they think of only, the classics of the past, the Verdi and Puccini and that. It seems to me there's a lot of really great American opera being composed right now, and Hagee's a good example of the composers putting out some really interesting operas, both smaller operas and larger productions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of my work that I do, I direct, the War Horses, Traviatas, and Carmens, and Bohems, and I love to do that repertoire. But I also personally, I work with a lot of composers writing new operas. And over the past 10, 15 years, there's a lot of foundation support for composers writing American works. And as a result, we have some fantastic new works on the stages right now. Jake Heggie, of course, Anthony Davis, who just won the Pulitzer for Central Park 5. Yeah. Laurie Laitman, who's written amazing operas, Scarlet Letter, a new opera called Uncovered. I mean, so there's a lot of American voices out there, a lot of women's voices out there also. Rachel Peters is one. In fact, she has roots in New England. I think she's a Brandeis graduate, if I'm correct. Just wonderful composers, a lot of women's voices, a lot of Black, Indigenous, people of color also contributing to the field and coming up with amazing works. I have a Fannie Lou Hamer opera right now for Santa Fe, and if you don't know Fannie Lou Hamer, then you'll know her, and she's just coming into the public consciousness as well. And so, it's a nice piece. There's, it's exciting to be involved with new American works, and especially new American works of this quality. That was a long-winded thing. Sorry, I should be more concise.
Well, and I think, I think it's great that you're pointing this out, because I think not only is there a lot of great music being produced by these American opera composers, it's very socially relevant. They're taking on a lot of very interesting new themes that are very relevant to, and I think that's a very important aspect. It makes opera really alive for American audiences, and I think you're absolutely right. It's a great, these operas are great for people who want to get started with opera, because it's something that's more relevant. Then that way they can go back to the classics and understand those operas in a kind of a new, different way.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point. Thank you for clarifying that, because these are our stories, and a lot of theater is a mirror of our lives. And it's easier to see people we know that we could meet in the supermarket rather than, kings and queens and princes and, people we have such a almost non-existent relationship with. So, and yes, and great American voices out there. So, and stories of our time.
Yeah, I found Glory Denied a really solid theater piece when we went to see it. And I thought, this... It was a theater piece that was sung, and I don't usually feel that when I go to see a classical opera. But then I would assume that the people that went to see Don Giovanni or Traviata or Carmen back in the day, to them, that was a very contemporary story in their setting and their time.
Right. Yeah, there's so many different stories we can tell in opera and ways of telling it. So yes, they, a 19th century audience would have understood Violetta and La Traviata differently than we do, absolutely. But sometimes opera transcends that. You lose all sense of place and time, and you just look at these very human stories. And even underneath the crowns of princes and kings that we have to deal with as opera characters, there's always a very human heart. forgive me for leaving out Tom Ciapullo, the wonderful composer of Glory Denied, is another one who's just created beautiful, beautiful works. So yeah, a lot of good stuff out there, and American voices, American stories, and I think it's going to be fantastic. We have a fantastic cast also, and I'm very excited about it all.
How much time will you have to actually direct and stage this opera? I mean, I know that when we have theater people on the program, the typical play at Hartford Stage or Theater Works may get 3 weeks of rehearsal and then a few days of tech. What's it like in opera?
Oh my God. Here's the thing that's completely insane about opera, and is what we do, because it's such a highly collaborative art. We have to put together so many things, and music being one of them, and orchestras and all those other things. But yet we have the greatest fans without question, and we have the least amount of rehearsal time. And it's just a proportion that is crazy to me, because we're trained to work really quickly, because most things about opera on a big stage are big, they're oversized, they're supersized. I mean, that's one of the things about the appeal of opera. It brings stories in a different level, very big fat level of storytelling. But as you can imagine, once you start working at bigger theaters and you have union crews, every second is very expensive. So we're just trained to work very, very quickly. We don't have anywhere near the kind of time that theatrical productions get. We have, the thing of what a good director does, and I'm certainly a great one, but I am. But you have to, you absolutely have to budget your time. And thank God I had a very long career at City Opera when they were at Lincoln Center. And it was a big repertory company, and we had fantastic people, and we could do shows. We just learned to rehearse shows very quickly, not sacrifice the quality, but you just learn how to budget your time. And that's a skill that professional directors absolutely need to have to be successful. There's no sort of magical thinking that the schedule is going to grow. The schedule is a schedule, and you have to respect that and come up with something good. And we do, and all the cast people have that sort of same mindset, and you just get into that work mode. So yeah, you use the time that you have in the best possible way.
Do you have the opportunity, because you're doing a contemporary work and the composer is still alive, do you have the opportunity to ask the composer about the work?
Absolutely.
You can't go back to Verdi or Bizet and say, hey, what were you thinking when you wrote that? But you've got this opportunity.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite opera question. Which composer would you like to have a cup of coffee with? And so it's hard to pick. I know Maestro Brian Garman, he would say Verdi, just like he wouldn't even think, I have so many favorites. But yes, of course, in the work that I do now, working with composers and librettists, yes, you stop and ask questions about meaning, or I just did a world premiere of a new opera by Laurie Laitman called Uncovered. And so right now we're just, you get it on its feet for the first time and see how it lives and breathes in a real space with real people doing everything. And, you start to just make just a few adjustments. So it's very exciting to work with someone who can be there on the scene. And sometimes Henry Moore, the great sculptor, Henry Moore said this, it's very hard for artists to talk about their own work. So if I could ask a composer, well, what were you thinking here? And it's a simple sounding question, but they weren't thinking in a kind of rational, intellectual way. They were just composing by intuition, by talent, by genius. And so you have to sort of unravel things and stuff, but it's very exciting. Or in the case, sometimes you have scene changes, you need a little extra music, incidental music to cover those scene changes. And you can call up a composer and say, hey, send me 20 seconds of this. And that works. There's a very famous story about Irving Berlin and Annie Get Your Gun. And they were doing this for the first time, and they had some scene changes. So it's not, you don't want scene changes in silence in the theater, unless it's a moment the audience really needs to sort of digest, but you want to keep things going, and music keeps things going. So anyway, so the producer said to Irving Berlin, Irving, go home and write us some scene change music. So the next morning he came back with a little tune called There's No Business Like Show Business. So There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, and I've always been curious about that too, because you do read accounts of Verdi, coming out, premiering one of his operas, and then he went back and made revisions and this sort of thing. Have you ever said to a composer, "This section is not working. Can you rewrite it or something?" Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's an expression we use, like creative artists. No one likes to quote kill their darlings. So sometimes they don't have the objective distance to make a change, or they don't want to change, or sometimes we're just too exhausted. And there's all the practicalities of working very quickly and stuff. But yes, absolutely. I'm working on a moment right now that just was not working theatrically. And now I had a little space from it. I could see it more clearly and just refine it. Again, as director, you get very little time to get something up on stage and produced and ready for the public. But, as a creator, you have a little more time unless you have a very, very strict deadline. You have more time to think and change. And we're getting what is a finished score, but there were a lot of sketches before that thing became polished. Like think of cutting a stone, a diamond cutter, and just constantly polishing and refining, and so it takes work and stuff.
I think people don't realize, opera is theater, music. You have orchestra, you have singers. There's just so many elements that go into it. I think people don't realize just how complicated it is to put together an opera production. More so than theater, where you just where you're just working. I mean, theater is complicated enough, but opera, you're adding that music element on, which is very difficult. And I think anytime an opera comes together successfully, just is a miracle in a way. When you think about it.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask Abigail a question. You're doing there's a big opera at the Mahawi, fully staged, and it's Don Giovanni's in its original language and all of that. How long in advance do you and your creative team sit down and decide what opera you want to do, or what thing? Are you planning now for 2023, or have you planned it to
2026?
Oh, okay.
Wow!
We have to. No,
you have to.
You have to. So our artistic director and one of our co-founders, Brian Garman, he spends a lot of time really very thoughtfully planning out the years in advance, and we're trying to make sure that we're balancing our programming, and we're not just only doing Verdi's or only doing this, but also too, very practically, to get the artists that we want to perform in these pieces, we have to book out multiple years in advance. We're performing at a certain level, we're getting a certain caliber of artists, including Beth as well, and they're busy. They're booked out years in advance. And we spend so much time carefully assembling the cast and the creative teams and all of that. And the only way that we're able to achieve these productions and to do them so well and so successfully is because we're getting on people's calendars that far in advance. So it really requires us to be really thoughtful and strategic, and again, really plan in advance.
And I would think Don Giovanni is a hard production to put together. You've got a lot of really difficult roles there. Yes. Isn't that correct? That just the number of
yes, that is true.
demanding roles.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And what I'm very excited about our particular production of Don Giovanni is that, speaking of how long it takes in advance, we were originally slated to do this production with this cast and creative team in 2020. And unfortunately, it was one of the first, sort of victims of COVID. And unfortunately, we ended up having to cancel. So, at the time, we pivoted, as we all did, and we were able to have our cast members participate in a virtual concert that we did. So mostly recording from home, because remember, we were all in lockdown then. And so they were able to, send in some selections, and we were able to put together a piece. So, point being, it's really nice to revisit this 2 years later and think about how far we've come. And, I'm going back and I'm thinking about all the preparations we were doing leading up to that original production. And then we had to pivot so quickly. Yeah. And so be able to go back and come back to it. And so it's really exciting to get another chance to do this wonderful, wonderful work.
You had planned it and then basically shelved it when the pandemic came along. So what did you do? Store the sets and the costumes and renegotiate with all of the cast to come back and do it when you could?
Yeah. So thankfully, we hadn't quite gotten to the stage of actually building the sets yet and the costumes. We were, we were in an idling pattern. We weren't quite sure. So thankfully, we hadn't invested too much in actually building things. However, we did make it clear to the cast that we would very much, when we did need to cancel, that we were intending to postpone rather than fully cancel. And so immediately we were trying to get this back on the calendar for this summer. And so thankfully, people were willing to do that. And so we're so pleased by the number of people who are returning for this.
Yeah, I want to mention, thank you for mentioning Brian Garman's name. He's the artistic director, is that the correct? Yes. So Brian is one of the most, oh my God, Brian, how could I describe Brian? He is one of the greatest musicians I have ever worked with in my entire career. He is just wonderful for singers. He really gets it. He gets the style, he gets everything. And just a beautiful colleague of mine. And then his co-colleague, who is Jonathan Loy, what is Jonathan's title?
Jonathan
he is
Loy,
the,
yes, Jonathan,
yes,
our co-founder.
Co-founder, and I don't want to miss his title exactly, as he's a
director of production.
Yes, director of production. So Jonathan Loy is a wonderful colleague, brilliant stage director, and so between Brian and Jonathan, you're gonna have, and the cast. Now Brian has one of the greatest ears and spots talent, and you'll be able to say that, oh, I saw him or her in the Berkshires, and now they're like one of the greatest operas. They're just like known, and they're just like all over the world and stuff. And you can say, I saw them there in a small theater, smaller theater than the Met, and especially Don Giovanni. It's sort of an intimate opera. You have your six principal artists, six principal characters, a very small ensemble, small chorus. But boy, does that talk about drama at the boiling point. There's nothing like it. If you haven't seen a Don Giovanni, you have to. You absolutely have to. And in the hands of these great artists, Brian and Jonathan, it's going to be something special.
Yeah. How did Berkshire Opera Festival come to be? I mean, there had been at various points in time opera company. There was Connecticut Opera, which went under, and Project Opera in Northampton, which was Commonwealth Opera and went under. But opera doesn't seem to exist on an ongoing basis outside major metropolitan areas. Mm-hmm. How did Berkshire Opera Festival come to be and choose the Berkshires?
Sure. So it's really a story of friendship between our co-founders, Jonathan Loy and Brian Garman. Jonathan has deep roots in the Berkshires. He's got family all over here, uncles and cousins and whatnot. And so he's been coming to the Berkshires every summer growing up. So he's very familiar with the area and very aware of what was here or not here, relative to the arts. And so Brian and Jonathan, they've known each other for a very long time. They met back in Pittsburgh, and in the early years, they sort of had this idea of perhaps doing a Verdi festival in Pittsburgh, and sort of put that away. And a number of years passed, but they always had this idea that they wanted to do something together, and they wanted to, but they weren't quite sure what it would be. And so somewhere along the way, Jonathan called up Brian and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come up to the Berkshires. It's a really special place. There's no one doing opera right now, and that's crazy. Like, there really should be. I mean, we've got Tanglewood and Jacob's Pillow and that's what, all these like the best of the arts, and yet there was no one doing opera." So, Jonathan brought Brian up, gave them a tour around. Brian immediately fell in love with the area, as we all do. And so then they put the plans in motion. So the company was founded in 2014. They got their 501c3 status and, got the basic pieces in place to actually form a nonprofit and a company. They spent 2 years fundraising. And then in 2016, premiered the first season. And so it's a relatively young company still, especially if you consider the sort of the COVID interruptions. This is year 7, and 2 of these 7 years have been a bit odd, but we're very much looking to come back. And from there, just every year we've been continuing to grow the company, add programming, add staff, invest more in our production values, of course, artist fees and all of that. So, and we're still growing. I mean, as I said, we've got plans mapped out for the company 5 years in advance. And so our challenge is trying to figure out how to keep pace with our ambitions. And to your point earlier, why is opera not performed as much outside of those major metropolitan areas? Some of it is just practical issues. Opera does very well and is best served in sort of a larger house, with your orchestra pit and all of that. And those types of venues are just rarer when you get to the more rural and suburban areas, unlike in a city. So, we have those issues as well, but we have wonderful partners that we work with to produce our work. And as so long as our patrons and our donors keep supporting us, the future seems bright. And we have every reason to believe that opera will be just as strong and prominent here in the Berkshires as any other of the wonderful art forms that are here.
And I have to say, you talk about, opera houses, usually people think of going to like the Metropolitan in New York, a big opera house. But I have to say, I love the smaller venues like this because it's a more intimate connection to the music and the theater. It's really a great experience. So, and I think people who maybe have gone to the Metropolitan and haven't gone to a small theater production like this, they've really missed something. They should do this because it is so much more direct, and you just feel like you can connect to the performers and the music so much better, I think, than in a big hall where you're way up in the upper balcony or something. So to me, that's a great experience.
It's funny though that in New England, and a couple of years ago, I interviewed somebody from Opera North, which is in White River Junction, Vermont, and they perform at a small opera house in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And there's an opera house in Bellows Falls, and there's an old opera house in Brattleboro, because in the early days, people would take the trains. The opera companies would travel from opera house to opera house. And so anywhere there was a railroad station in New England, there was an opera house within walking distance. But it seems now that, certainly things have changed. We have opera in Boston and New York, but you have made the Berkshires a home for opera. And do you think down the road you'll be expanding to do year-round things, or do you see yourselves primarily as more of a summer type of?
I certainly believe so. I mean, we're already starting to do that, to sort of start programming outside of sort of the traditional summer season. Just 2 weeks ago, we had our season curtain raiser, if you will. It was an all Mozart concert, which was sort of in honor of Don Giovanni in our upcoming season. And I think too, here in the Berkshires, and I think in other parts of the country too, just with COVID and everything, people have sort of flipped their residency a bit. We're noticing a lot more of our constituents who are perhaps considered themselves only summertime residents of the Berkshires and might live somewhere else, have sort of flipped it now. And now a lot of people, this is their year-round home. And so we are interested in producing more programming for everyone who is here year-round.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Abby, I'm glad you said that, because there's been such a shift in the way Americans live and work since the pandemic. And because we have computers and the internet, people can work from home, and why not be in the Berkshires and all that beauty? And so, so that's a nice opera audience coming along and stuff. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, this is a nice place to live too. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have New York and Boston, but this is nice. We're out of time. And I want to thank both of you for joining us today. And if you want information on the Berkshire Opera Festival's season, they have a great website, berkshireoperafestival.org. I find their stuff on Facebook. So you can also check there. And I hope you'll come back during the year again and chat more opera with us. It's been a pleasure having Abigail Rollins and Beth Greenberg from Berkshire Opera Festival.
Enjoy the discussion very much. Very interesting.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to the productions.
Yeah. And that wraps up this program of Atheneaum Spotlight with Guy McLean and Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer today. We've been broadcasting from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. If you've missed a part of today's program, or you want to watch it again or share it with your friends, you'll find it archived on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
thank you.
Thank you.
The moon sings a song for you every I'll dress up. You'll wear that great black gown of mine. Dior. Yes, it's good. You need to doll it up. It's gonna be quite a night. It's the Tonys, and I've been nominated again. You'll come by early, and we'll play dress up. Okay. You can try on all my things, just like I used to. I can doll you up. It will be lots of fun, and we'll make a splendid entrance with my brother, with my children at the Tonys next week. It will be just like the old little family. Big and doll you up. It means so much to me. It will be nice to see you happy for a change. Maybe this will help. A night out at the Tonys with Mom. Maddie! I will see you smiling at the Tonys for sure. Maddie! What? Please. What did I say? Nothing. I would like us to celebrate, not just lament. Your brother's grief I understand. Yours, to be honest, is a mystery to me.